Hi there, my name is Emily Roberts, and I am going to be presenting on case study 1. So my client for this case study is 6 years old. The client was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder back in October of 2018. He's also on medication, Vyvanse for ADHD. He started receiving ABA therapy services in February 2019. This client communicates through a speech-generated device. He uses the LAMP app. His largest skill deficits are listener responding, play skills, and attending. The behavior that we're going to look at during this case presentation is aggression, which the operational definition of aggression is any instance when the client attempts to or makes forceful contact with any part of their body to another person's body. This includes, but is not limited to, squeezing, chinning, pinching, hitting, and pulling hair. So there are some possible positive reinforcement contingencies here. After the aggression occurred, we saw that the individuals would physically redirect or block the client. They would reprimand the client, say, no, don't do that, no hitting, no scratching, and also try to provide options for alternative behavior. And that could have been like squeezing a stress ball, squeezing a blanket, taking deep breaths as a coping mechanism. But all these consequences acted as positive reinforcement because they all increased the instances of aggressive behavior. But we did conduct a functional behavior assessment, an FBA for this client, and we wanted to determine the function of the aggressive behavior. So we provided examples and non-examples of the behavior. So an example would be the BT is sitting beside the client stands up and squeezes their shoulder. A non-example would be the client requests tickles from the behavior technician. As the behavior technician is providing tickles, the client accidentally bumps up against the BT. Our baseline measurement was collected with frequency data collection. We saw an average of 0.7 instances of aggression per day, with a range of 0 to 4 per day across the span of 2 weeks. The intervention implemented was an antecedent and consequence intervention. We found out that the function of the behavior was to gain access to physical touch, such as squeezes, hugs, or tickles. So for the antecedent intervention, a program was put into place in order to teach the client how to ask for physical touch appropriately through the use of their communication device. So every 15 minutes throughout the client's day, the BT would airlessly model how to request one of the target actions on the client's device. As soon as the client would select the correct icon, the BT would allow access to the corresponding target action listed above, so either squeezes, tickles, or hugs. After 3 days of modeling how to request physical touch, the BT then waited for the client to request the action independently, and then they would immediately allow access to the action. We also put in place a consequence intervention. So after the antecedent intervention was put into place, if the aggressive behavior was still to occur, the BT would neutrally back away from the client without making any facial expressions or speaking. The BT would wait for the client to request one of the target actions. If the client did not request one of the target actions, the BT would wait for 15 minutes and then model how to request again. We didn't want to create a behavior chain where the client would aggress, we would prompt the correct response, and then he'd get access to what he wanted. So we waited for 15 minutes to model the appropriate command. Motivating operations and schedule of reinforcement. We wanted to enhance the value or reinforcement when the client requested physical touch appropriately by immediately providing access to the physical touch. Starting out, when we first implemented this procedure, we started out on an FR1. After 1 week of the client independently requesting all 3 of the target actions, we gradually began fading back the schedule of reinforcement to a VR3, just so that the client would know that not every time that I request a hug, a tickle, or a squeeze, I would get one immediately, especially when like out in public or his parents are busy and can't give him that at that moment. Generalization and maintenance generalization of requesting physical touch. We used various people in the client's life other than his team members, including families at home. Um, they also used the antecedent intervention in different environments, so within the clinic, at home, out in public, but with just his family members. After about 1 month of this intervention, we discontinued the intervention that was in place. The client was still independently requesting physical touch after the discontinuation of the intervention. So the outcomes of this intervention was the client was able to independently and more appropriately request physical touch from those that are closest to them. The instances of aggression decreased tremendously to an average of only one over the course of 2 weeks. There was one obstacle during the course of this intervention, which was teaching the client that it's not appropriate to go up to random strangers and request physical touch. We had to be very careful when the client was in public to ensure that his parents were always right there by him to allow access to his request. Um, we did have one modification, which was the schedule of reinforcement. We modified this to ensure that the client was still gaining access to the physical touch when he requested it, but not on every account. And that is the end of my case study 1 presentation. Thank you.